After witnessing Boruto completely dominate Code using his new jutsu, rasengan uzuhiko, it was made abundantly clear that this is a ridiculously powerful ability, being able to quickly and easily defeat the likes of Code, someone who surpasses even Jigen. But just how strong is this jutsu really? What are its effects on the opponent? How does it actually work? And what are its drawbacks or weaknesses? Let's answer these questions based on everything we learned in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 3. So first things first, how strong is this jutsu? The answer is very strong, not because it can blow up a village or anything, but because it's extremely dangerous. Its greatest strength doesn't come from external damage on its opponent, but rather from internal damage inside the opponent. In this manner, the rasengan uzuhiko is actually a lot more like the gentle fist than it is a rasengan, making this jutsu a sort of cross between the rasengan and the gentle fist, which I think is really cool given that Boruto's father Naruto is a rasengan user, while his mother Hinata is a gentle fist user. And just like how the gentle fist bypasses durability because you can't train your internal organs to withstand damage, making it effective against even the strongest of opponents, the rasengan uzuhiko also seems to bypass durability, easily working on Code, who's stronger than Jigen and is actually very durable as he takes a heavy beating from Damon, who's ridiculously strong and might even be stronger than Ishiki. Yet Code is able to take that beating and still keep on fighting. That's pretty impressive. By comparison, Boruto and Kawaki got knocked out from just one half-ass hit to the head, let alone several. But despite his durability, this jutsu is very effective on Code, because it attacks him internally rather than externally, just like the gentle fist. But what exactly did this jutsu do to Code? Simply put, it made him dizzy. Once Boruto completely strikes Code with the rasengan uzuhiko, Code starts to see a bunch of spinning, he comments on all that spinning, and then he falls over, tries to get back up, and falls over again. He just looks very dizzy. He's even grabbing his head in a tree behind him because he's so dizzy and off balance. And because he's so disoriented, it's incredibly difficult for Code to keep fighting at a high level, as it's hard for him to land any attacks on Boruto, and it's hard for him to dodge any of Boruto's attacks in return. It's very reminiscent of Dosu's sound ability that he used against Rock Lee in the Force of Death, where Dosu directs an extremely powerful sound into his opponent's ear to upset the liquid within the semicircular canals of the inner ear, making it impossible for his opponent to maintain their balance. This made Lee so disoriented that Dosu looked all wavy and his movements were significantly hindered, and eventually Lee couldn't fight at all anymore, and this is a lot like the situation with Boruto and Code. Code started to see all this spinning and lost his sense of balance, and he was unable to fight properly anymore. The method in which Boruto achieved this is very different from Dosu, but the effect is pretty similar. But unlike the gentle fist and Dosu's sound fist, the rasengan uzuhiko lasts semi-permanently, as Boruto puts it. It will continue until the planet stops rotating or your life runs out, with the second option being more likely. So you can't just run away to recover from the attack and then return for a rematch later on. You will still be under the jutsu's effect regardless. So we have a jutsu that seems to bypass durability, makes your opponent very disoriented, and lasts until they die or the planet stops spinning. That's pretty damn strong. But how the heck does this jutsu actually work? We don't get a super thorough explanation of the jutsu, but between Boruto and Damon's dialogue, we can put the pieces together pretty nicely. Let's start with Damon. After Boruto completely lands his rasengan uzuhiko on Code, Eida questions how this jutsu is different from a regular rasengan. Damon then says, so Boruto's the one making the ground tremble. Or rather, it's the entire Earth. This attack makes use of planetary spin. Now at first glance, a lot of people might be like, oh my god, this is crazy! Boruto's making the whole planet shake! But Boruto's not making the whole planet shake around like an earthquake. If he was, we would have gotten some emphasis or visual indication of the Earth shaking around in at least one panel, and other characters would have picked up on this too. But instead, it was completely unnoticeable to everyone except for Damon. The ridiculous part here is the fact that Damon even noticed the Earth trembling in the first place. Damon's just that guy. He noticed the ground trembling and understood that it must be Boruto's doing, and he immediately follows his Earth trembling comment with the fact that the move makes use of planetary spin. In doing so, he answers the question of why the Earth is trembling. It's because the rasengan uzuhiko makes use of planetary spin. But why would that make the Earth tremble? Let's jump over to Boruto's dialogue for a minute then come back to this question. Code asks Boruto what he did to him, and Boruto says, enjoy. Think of it as a biting counterattack from this planet that you were trying to destroy. Now while it's true that Boruto is being clever with his words and speaking metaphorically, he's also giving us a key detail about how this jutsu works. The power that is directly affecting Code is actually the planet's, not Boruto's. He's just making use of the planet's power and its fundamental mechanics, coinciding with what Damon said about how this move makes use of planetary spin. Boruto then continues to elaborate on this, saying, "A rasengan that incorporates a planet's chakra, its rotation. That's what uzuhiko is. The power that is rushing through your body right now will never dissipate, just like how a planet will never stop spinning. The damage will continue semi-permanently. Semi, because your life will run out before the planet stops spinning." Putting these lines into context with what I've explained so far, things will start to click together now. Let's start with that first part. A rasengan that incorporates a planet's chakra, its rotation. That's what uzuhiko is. This is why it's a counterattack to the planet, because it's using the planet's chakra and rotation. But what does this actually mean, and how does this relate to what Damon said about planetary spin and the Earth trembling? I first want you to think about what a rasengan is. It's a sphere of compressed, rotating chakra. The name rasengan literally means spiraling sphere. Now, what is a planet? In very simple terms, a planet is a very large object that orbits a star. It's large enough that it has enough gravity to compress it into a spherical shape, and is large enough that its gravity clears away any other objects of a similar size near its orbit around a star. A planet also rotates along an axis, usually counterclockwise, but sometimes they rotate clockwise like Venus and Uranus. The important part is that a planet is compressed into a sphere and it rotates, a lot like a rasengan, and because the planet is always rotating, the natural chakra of the planet rotates along with it. In a sense, you can think of the planet as a ridiculously massive rasengan. With this in mind, let's finally answer the nagging question. What is Boruto actually doing? Rather than rotating and compressing his own chakra like a normal rasengan, Boruto is harnessing the naturally rotating chakra of the planet. The swirls of chakra we see around Boruto are not from Boruto's own chakra, like in the case of Sasuke's Chidori stream or a chakra cloak or something of that nature, but instead from the planet's chakra that is already rotating because of planetary spin. This is why the power rushing through Code's body will never dissipate, because the chakra of the planet won't disappear under normal circumstances, and the chakra won't stop rotating unless the planet stops rotating. Since both are unlikely, the chakra and rotation remain indefinitely. Boruto then forces this continuously rotating chakra into its opponent's body, very similar to how a Gentle Fist user releases chakra from their hands and forces it into their opponent's body. But rather than attacking the chakra network and internal organs like the Gentle Fist, this jutsu just throws the enemy completely out of whack. Boruto, however, remains unaffected by this jutsu because the uzuhiko chakra is outside of Boruto's body rather than inside his body like in Code's case, meaning his insides aren't rotating like crazy, and so he doesn't become all dizzy and disoriented like Code did. Now, a small detail I think is really cool is that the Earth, like most planets, rotates counterclockwise, and in the panel where Code is seeing all that spinning, the direction of the spinning is counterclockwise, just like the rotation of the Earth. I think that's pretty cool. And there's two different ways you can interpret this effect. The first is that the internally rotating chakra makes Code dizzy, as if he spun around in circles multiple times and then stopped spinning, making him all wobbly and off balance afterwards, except the effect continues indefinitely. And the second is that the chakra is literally rotating Code as if he's currently spinning around in circles. So if Code were to go to sleep and the claw grinder watching over him, they'd see him spinning around in circles in his sleep. I think either option could work and they both make sense, but that first option sounds more dangerous to me because Code could hypothetically resist the rotation of his body in that second option and simply get used to it, whereas I don't really see how he could just get used to that first option, so I would prefer the internal effect personally. I will also add that Boruto might be rotating the planet's chakra in addition to its natural rotation in order to amplify the jutsu's effect, but the concept is still the same either way. Now, unlike a lot of jutsu in Naruto, Boruto can hit the undo button. He can simply release the technique and undo all of the damage he's done to his opponent. This allows him to make threats and strike deals in an interesting way. Instead of saying, "Do what I say or I'll chop off your legs," Boruto can chop off their legs and say, "Do what I say and I'll heal your legs." Metaphorically speaking anyway, not literally. Now, the way in which Boruto releases the technique is by releasing the rotating planet chakra from his opponent's body, most likely either by absorbing it with his karma seal, or by releasing it back into the surrounding area where it came from, using his ability to interact with the planet's chakra in the first place. Now, all of this answers what Boruto is actually doing and how the Rasengan Uzuhiko works, but one question still remains. Why was the Earth trembling? I want you to think about a train, roller coaster, or really big truck suddenly slowing down, or a plane slowing down after it lands. You can feel that big vehicle tremble when it slows down. It's not perfectly smooth and unnoticeable, and the greater the mass of the object and the greater the change in speed, the more noticeable this tremble will be. Now in real life, Earth rotates at about 1,000 miles an hour, and its mass is estimated to be about 5.972 times 10 to the 24th kilograms, which as you can imagine is very big and very fast. And just like how a plane, train, roller coaster, or big truck carries a lot of people or items, the Earth carries a lot of people and other structures, which makes this tremble even more noticeable. Now in the case of Boruto and Code, I think Boruto borrowed the planet's chakra and natural rotation and implanted it into Code. In doing so, he slowed down the planet's rotation ever so slightly, to a degree only noticeable by Damon. And just like how you can feel a roller coaster, train, or plane tremble when it slows down from a high speed, I think Damon might be noticing a tremble from the Earth's rotation slowing down from its 1,000 miles an hour speed, coinciding with how Damon knew that Boruto's jutsu made use of planetary spin and related that to the Earth trembling. Now proportionately speaking, Boruto barely made a difference to the Earth's rotation, so the average person should not be able to notice anything. Damon is just ridiculous. Now the trickiest thing to explain about this jutsu is probably the scene of Code missing Boruto with his attacks. It's implied through Code's thoughts that Boruto is not just dodging and speed blitzing Code. Something else is going on, and there's only really 3 possibilities that I think seem the most likely. The first is that Boruto is using some sort of teleportation jutsu, perhaps a new one we haven't seen before. The second is that Code was just slightly disoriented but hadn't realized it yet. And the third is that Code is being rotated around Boruto when he comes into contact with the rasengan uzuhiko swirls of chakra around Boruto. In other words, if you threw a shuriken at Boruto, rather than bouncing off of Boruto like with a Hyuga's rotation, the shuriken would just swing around Boruto and keep flying until it hits the ground or some other object. I think you can make a case for each of these 3 options. For that last one, it would explain why Code seems to keep going past Boruto without Boruto moving anywhere. It would relate to the rotation of chakra around Boruto, and it would also explain why it's beyond simple dodging. For the second one, it would explain what Boruto meant when he said, he's already halfway there, as Code would just be halfway affected by this point. So he wouldn't be falling over or anything crazy just yet, but it would be enough to make him miss his attacks on Boruto without realizing why he was missing it. And for the first option, it would still be something way beyond simple dodging like Code says, and it would explain how Boruto randomly appeared at Code's left when he was looking back at Boruto from his right, literally one panel before this. I lean a little more towards the second or third options, where Code was either just partially affected, or he was being rotated around Boruto, since it didn't look like Boruto was teleporting around when Code was missing him in the previous pages, but it did kinda seem like Boruto teleported in that last scene right before hitting Code with the rasengan uzuhiko, so I'm not fully certain what was going on here. So that explains how strong the rasengan uzuhiko is, how it actually works, and why it made the Earth tremble. But just like Itachi and Jigen said, every jutsu has a weakness, and this jutsu is no exception. The first and most obvious weakness is that it seems to require contact with the opponent. When Boruto said he was already halfway there, Code was grabbing Boruto's hand, meaning they were making contact, and when Boruto actually landed the rasengan uzuhiko on Code, he hit Code in the stomach with his hand. It doesn't appear to be a jutsu that he can use at long range, meaning it would be difficult to land this attack on someone who can fight at long range. That being said, Boruto does cover up this weakness very well with his Karma Seal, his speed, and his ability to fly, as he can fly and move really fast to close the distance between someone who flies and fights from a long range like Deidara, and even if the enemy is fast enough to keep their distance from Boruto, he can just absorb most ninjutsu the enemy dishes out from that long range using his Karma Seal. So unless the enemy has long-range attacks using natural substances like Kashin Koji's natural flames from the Flaming Mountains, or chakra rods like Kawaki Nishiki or something like that, they're just gonna have to get in close eventually in order to do any damage to Boruto. Now the next weakness is that because this jutsu requires contact with the opponent's body in order to force the planet's naturally rotating chakra into the enemy's body, if the enemy has a jutsu that prevents Boruto from making contact with their physical body, or from letting Boruto's chakra enter their body, like Kamui, the Susanoo, Gaara's Sand Shield, Jipa's Carbon Armor, Kawaki's Ninja Tech Shields, Neji's Rotation, Kidomaru's Kumonenkin Golden Armor, and maybe even the Raikage's Lightning Cloak, Boruto can't use his jutsu unless he can break through the enemy's armor first or time his attacks perfectly in the case of Kamui, because the chakra swirling outside of the opponent's body doesn't seem to do anything to them as we see in the case of Boruto. It's not until the chakra gets inside the opponent's body that they get thrown out of whack, so if the enemy has a way of preventing that from happening, even when fighting at close range, they can effectively avoid this jutsu from harming them. The next weakness is Juu Absorption from the Rasengan, Karma Seal, Ninja Tech, or some other means. While this jutsu uses the planet's chakra, it doesn't contain any physical matter. It's still just pure chakra, and we've seen the Rasengan, Karma Seal, and Ninja Tech all absorb Sage Mode jutsu that use nature energy on several occasions, so the Rasengan, Karma Seal, and Ninja Tech should all be able to absorb the rasengan uzuhiko just fine. And even though they technically be absorbing this chakra into their bodies, they wouldn't be affected by the jutsu because Juu Absorption doesn't just absorb the jutsu as is into their body. It also nullifies it and renders it useless. It's not like Jigen's insides were on fire when he absorbed Sasuke's Amaterasu. It's not like Kawaki's insides were rotating like crazy when he absorbed Borushiki's Massive Rasengan. And it's not like Pain or Madara were being attacked at the cellular level when they absorbed Naruto's Rasen Shuriken. That's not how that works. So anyone who absorbs Rasengan Uzuhiko should be just fine. And in the case of Momoshiki's Rinnegan ability, this would be extra bad because Momoshiki would be able to amplify and release his jutsu onto Boruto or someone else later on. And if Boruto isn't around to release the jutsu, that person could be screwed. Of course, this isn't overly relevant since Momoshiki is stuck inside Boruto and he hasn't used his Rinnegan abilities at any point as Borushiki anyway, but someone else could theoretically possess the same ability and that could be problematic. Now the next weakness is that just as Boruto can harness the power of the planet to implant this rotating chakra into his opponent and then release it if he chooses to, the enemy might be able to just release the chakra from their body if they figure out how to do so. We've seen characters in Naruto extract specific types of chakra from their opponent before, so there is a precedent for this. For example, Momoshiki was specifically extracting Kurama and Yuki's chakra out of Naruto and B during the Momoshiki arc. Obito specifically extracted some of Shukaku and Yuki's chakra from Madara and implanted it into Naruto. Orochimaru specifically extracted his own chakra out of Kabuto that Kabuto had absorbed previously. The Akatsuki specifically extracted the Biju out of the Jinchuriki with the Geto statue. Sasuke absorbed some of Kurama's chakra out of Naruto during their final battle. Minato is specifically going to extract Kurama out of himself and implant it into Naruto to save his life during the war arc, and so on. Sakura was even able to extract Sasori's poison out of Kankuro. So with these examples in mind, I don't see why it would be impossible for an ally or the target themselves to extract and release his chakra from their body, especially in light of the Minato example. And if that is the case, then it's possible for someone other than Boruto to release his jutsu. However, when it comes to Code, all of these weaknesses so far are completely irrelevant. Code is primarily a close-range fighter, teleporting behind his opponents to slash them with his big claws. This gives Boruto plenty of opportunities to hit Code with his jutsu. Even if Code uses his claw grime, they're not that strong of their own except for the ones with the Rinnegan, so their main purpose is just to provide a distraction and add more claw marks to the battlefield for surprise attacks. So Code is still going to inevitably come into close range to slash Boruto with his claws, giving Boruto a chance to hit Code with his jutsu. Now while it is true that Code can spawn claw marks on his opponent from a distance and stick his claws through those claw marks to slash his opponents like we saw him do a ton at the beginning of the Code arc, he hasn't done this tactic a single time since his fight with True S and Boruto in Chapter 64. Not once, even though it's literally his best move. And even if he did use this tactic more, Boruto has shown the ability to yank Code out of the claw mark when he does this, as we saw in Chapter 64, so no matter how you slice it, Boruto has the potential to get in close range to land this attack on Code. Furthermore, Code doesn't have any sort of armor or defensive shield to prevent Boruto from being able to implant this rotating chakra into his body. So if Boruto does land a solid hit on Code with his jutsu, it's game over. There's nothing he can do to protect himself. All he can do is dodge the jutsu in the first place, but since he fights at close range, he constantly bears the risk of being hit by this jutsu. In addition, Code's white Karma Seal is unable to absorb ninjutsu or chakra in general, so he can't just absorb the jutsu when Boruto uses it, or absorb the chakra out of himself using the Karma Seal. The only thing he can do is dodge it in the first place. On top of that, Code is not a ninja and seems to lack an in-depth understanding of chakra manipulation. He just has the Shinjutsu abilities implanted onto him from Amato, so it's unlikely that Code would know how to release his chakra from his body through chakra manipulation. I don't expect Code to know how to release chakra from all his chakra points like Neji can, or something like that. It's just not realistic. This jutsu is basically made to counter Code. tactically because he doesn't have any of these counters, and metaphorically because it's a counterattack from the planet that Code is trying to destroy. That's why it's so easy for Boruto to kill Code. By contrast, if you look at someone like Kawaki, another major opponent for Boruto in the future, this jutsu is a heck of a lot less useful. Unlike Code, Kawaki can and does frequently use long-ranged attacks that Boruto can absorb, such as his chakra rods, pillars, cubes, and ninja tech weapons. He can make ninja tech blades and shields to prevent Boruto from implanting the uzuhiko chakra inside Kawaki. He can absorb the jutsu with his karma seal. He can shrink the jutsu with Sukuna Hikona. He can dodge by shrinking himself with Sukuna Hikona. He can potentially absorb the jutsu out of himself with the karma seal in a very weird way if he's hit by the jutsu, and he can potentially learn how to release the jutsu from his body since he is now a trained ninja. Although that's easier said than done, and he probably doesn't actually know how to do that right now. So while this jutsu is very dangerous and incredibly effective against Code, it's not much of a threat for Kawaki, who has at least 4 counters to the jutsu. The same would apply to someone like Delta, who can absorb jutsu and is even able to see vanishing rasengans, so she would most likely be able to see the Rasengan Uzuhiko and absorb it too. So for anyone who might be worried that Boruto is going to stomp Kawaki now, that's probably not going to be the case unless Boruto has a bunch of other crazy new abilities besides the Rasengan Uzuhiko. Now the last potential weakness is one I alluded to earlier, which is that Code might be able to just get used to the rotation that was applied to him, similar to how Kabuto just figured out how to move his body properly after Tsunade messed up his nerve signals with her body pathway derangement jutsu. There's no guarantee that Code can do something similar, but it remains possible that he can depending on exactly how the rotating chakra affects Code. This is the only weakness that Code might be able to exploit, as literally anyone could theoretically do this as long as it's possible to do so, and this could very well be how Code gets out of the situation he's in. Who knows? Now the last thing I want to talk about is how I would have slightly rewritten this ability. Now it's entirely possible that they'll show my rewrite in a flashback or something, but I still want to talk about it anyway. So the first change I would make is that I would have written 2 stages or levels to this jutsu, similar to how the nature release Rasengan is really the second stage of the Rasengan that Minato and Kakashi were never able to master, and Naruto's Rasen Shuriken went beyond even that. In this case, the second stage would be similar to the one we saw in this chapter, while the first stage would be a little bit different. Rather than using the chakra of the planet, Boruto would be using his own chakra for the jutsu. He and Sasuke would come up with a jutsu similar to the Gentle Fist in Sasuke's Chidori Stream, but Rasengan style instead. Rather than rotating and compressing his chakra into a sphere in his hand, Boruto would release chakra from his body and rotate it around him, similar to how Sasuke emits Chidori from his whole body when using Chidori's Stream. It's also similar to the Hyuga's rotation, but Boruto would rotate his chakra like with a Rasengan instead of spinning his body like with rotation. From here, Boruto would do exactly what he did in this chapter. He would make contact with his opponent to implant this rotating chakra inside their body, making them dizzy just like Code. The reason why I like this first stage so much is because it's learning to walk before you run. Boruto is using his own chakra to do this before he uses the planet's chakra, similar to how Sasuke uses his own chakra for Chidori's Stream, rather than using natural lightning like for Kirin. Furthermore, there would be an additional downside to this first stage of the jutsu. Because it uses Boruto's own chakra rather than the planet's, Boruto would have to continuously funnel some of his chakra inside Code in order to keep the effects of the jutsu going, similar to how Naruto had to continuously funnel chakra into the ninja tech arm that he gave to Kawaki during the Kawaki arc, or else it would fall off and stop functioning. If Boruto stops funneling this rotating chakra into Code, Code would no longer be affected by the jutsu, so Boruto wouldn't want to go around spamming this jutsu on people, or else he'd just lose control over his opponents or run out of chakra. So while this would be a very powerful jutsu, there is also a very clear downside to its use, and so naturally Boruto would want to overcome this weakness, and this is where the second stage of the jutsu would come in. As we know, Boruto is using Kashin Koji's toads in this chapter, indicating that Boruto has been training with Kashin Koji, or at least working with him. And if Boruto has been training with Koji like I think he should, Kashin Koji would be able to help Boruto take this jutsu to new heights. As one of the only perfect Sage Mode users in Boruto, Kashin Koji has a deep understanding of nature energy, and he can use that knowledge to remove the major drawback of Boruto's jutsu. Instead of using his own chakra or the chakra of the planet, the jutsu is going to use nature energy. It doesn't really make much sense for the planet to have chakra in the first place based on previous Naruto lore. As we learned very early on in the series, chakra is the energy that is produced by mixing the mental and physical energies within the body. It's one thing for the planet to have physical energy, but it's kinda weird for the planet to have mental or spiritual energy. The planet isn't alive, it's just a really big rock. It doesn't have a soul and it doesn't have mental thoughts. It's just weird for the planet to mix mental and physical energy to create chakra. Furthermore, as we learn in chapter 409 during the pain arc, nature energy is the energy that exists in the atmosphere and the terrain, the energy in the air and the earth. In other words, the natural energy of the planet, unrelated to living creatures and chakra. The chakra of the planet that Boruto speaks of is what nature energy was originally described to be. Fukasaku made it abundantly clear that nature energy was different from chakra. A ninja mixes the mental and physical energies from the inside to create chakra, while a sage takes the internally generated chakra from the inside and adds nature energy from the outside into the mix to create senjutsu chakra or sage jutsu chakra. I know I'm just nitpicking semantics, but why not make it consistent with previous Naruto lore? So for my rewrite, I'm gonna make it consistent, and Boruto is gonna use nature energy per Kashin Koji's suggestion. But unlike with Sage Mode, Boruto is not going to use Senjutsu Chakra, which utilizes his own chakra. If he did, he would run into the same problem of having to continuously funnel his own chakra into his opponent's body to keep the jutsu going. So instead, Boruto is going to harness nature energy directly. Because there is practically an endless amount of nature energy and it won't disappear under normal circumstances, the nature energy would remain inside the opponent's body indefinitely. Just as how the nature energy doesn't just disappear if a sage user takes in too much nature energy, it permanently becomes a frog or a snake. You would either have to intentionally use that nature energy inside you to release it, which someone like Code wouldn't know how to do, or have that nature energy smacked out of you with Fukasaku's special stick, which most people don't have. And just as the planet rotates its natural chakra through planetary spin, as explained in this chapter, the exact same thing can apply to nature energy, and Boruto can assist in its rotation to amplify the jutsu's effect, just like he might be doing now. So not only would this fit previous Naruto lore better, have a better tie with Kashin Koji, and solve the main drawback from my Stage 1 Rasengan Uzuhiko, it would also explain why Boruto doesn't appear to be in Sage Mode in this chapter, despite using nature energy for this attack, or the planet's chakra in the case of the actual chapter. Since he wouldn't be combining nature energy from the outside with chakra from the inside, Boruto wouldn't be creating Senjutsu chakra, and so he wouldn't enter Sage Mode. It would also make Boruto unique from Naruto, Jiraiya, Kashin Koji, Kabuto, and Mitsuki, as Boruto would be using nature energy in a different way from all of these other sages, which I think is pretty cool and refreshing. Maybe they'll end up adding all this stuff later on, but if they never do, then this is just how I would have written the ability to suit my taste. But I want to hear what you guys think. What do you think about the Rasengan Uzuhiko? How strong do you think it is? Do you agree with my explanation for how it works? Do you think it has the same weaknesses that I do? And do you prefer my rewrite for how the ability works? Let me know in the comment section below, but that's a wrap on today's video, so thank you guys for watching until the end.
You're already under my genjutsu.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, like the video, check out my podcast channel, check out Peak Fiction, become a member, and hit the bell icon for notifications.
Sorry, Sasuke. Maybe some other time.
Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.